First off, I'm sorry about the late video. I've been particularly busy this week and just today found the time to think about this question as much as I felt like it deserved. I'd also like to start off with a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not really the right person to answer this question. I am particularly unaware when it comes to this kind of society stuff. I've never really paid attention to this kind of stuff. I just do what feels right to me, and I don't really worry about things like my role in society. However, I have given this some thought, and I'd like to share with you how I feel about it, and maybe you can find something useful out of it. Or maybe I'm just completely wrong, and then y'all can spend your videos telling me how wrong I am. Either way, take all of this with a grain of salt. I agree that there is a lack of a male role in society, but I am not convinced that this is a problem as such. There are a couple of ways of looking at this. First, let's take the idea of what it means to be a man. One way of looking at this is you could have a list of manly things, and doing these things makes you a man. And maybe it's something like do 25 push ups every day, and always open the door for a woman, or any such list of things. And I think that this is a bad thing. I don't think that adhering to some list of arbitrary rules is what makes you a man. Let's look at another idea, the role model. So this is the idea of having a role model that you can look up to and say, if I live my life like that man, then I will be a real man. This idea has a couple of problems, one of which is choosing the wrong person to look up to. And even if you choose the right person, that has the problem that people are, well, people. They're fallible. They make mistakes. And so how do you tell whether a certain behavior is worth emulating, even if it's, a mostly good person, all of these people that are kind of upheld as like great role models, like Martin Luther King Jr. and so on, like all of these people had behaviors that weren't so good. And so like how do you tell whether or not something fits in? Now there is one role model that doesn't have these problems, but I don't want to go too far in that direction because Jesus is not exactly the image of manliness. Um, and so again, I feel like having a role model where you say if I live my life according to that person, then I'll be a man. I feel like that's a bad idea. Again, it's just not quite. It's just not it. Now, these are important to think about, but I suspect this isn't quite what you had in mind with your question. I think you're talking more about specific roles that men can fill in society, and so the stereotype that I want to keep in mind throughout this next section is what I'm going to call the breadwinner. In the past, the man would be expected to provide for his family, and this idea is a bit old fashioned, but it works. And under this idea, there is no longer a role that man plays in society. This is true. And here's where I want to diverge just a little bit. I want to talk. One of the things that ContraPoints talks about is that she suggests that this lack of a role is a contributing factor to the increase in mass shootings. Or, if I may rephrase slightly, this lack of a male identity is a contributing factor. And this might be true, but I'd like to add another point of view to this. My identity comes from many places. It comes from my interests, my hobbies, my friends and family, you guys, my career, and more. And this is what makes me who I am. And for me, being a man does not contribute significantly to my core identity. I am who I am, and I just happen to be a man in addition to that. And I feel like I could be who I am and be a woman without changing too much about what makes me me. And I argue that it is a lack of identity that is encouraging these people. They want to be someone, but they don't have an identity, and they don't know how to be someone without that identity, and so they turn to this as a way to make an impact, as a way to be someone. And so here's how I see the male identity crisis playing into this. Is if there was some core male identity, these people could fall back on that. They could say, well, maybe I'm not doing so well in school, maybe I'm not doing so well in these other areas of life, but I can still support my family as the breadwinner. I can still fill this core male role. For me, should I fail out of graduate school, I have plenty of options still. My identity is larger than any one facet of my life. Like, sure, I'll be depressed for a while, but I'll keep going because I have more happening in my life than just graduate school. And these people don't really have that. But I don't think that the solution is to bring back the male identity, but to emphasize a more holistic identity, to support having a life based on more than trivial things like gender. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I look forward to just hearing what the others have to say.